and thank you for joining us for this week's Rise and Thrive with EHE Health, a weekly interactive series where we discuss all things health together. My name is Dulcia, and I am a healthcare analyst here at EHE Health. Today, we are joined by a very special guest, one of our own EHE physicians, Dr. Weil. Welcome, Dr. Weil.
Hi, Dulcia. Thank you for having me today. So I'm a family physician, trained physician with a background in integrative medicine, and I've been with EHE since 2018.
Gotcha. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. And also, if any viewers have questions for Dr. Weil, please put them in the comment section and we'll get to them at the end of the session. All right, so Dr. Weil, today we will be talking about summer safety and heat stroke prevention, which is a really important topic since the summer has been super scorching hot, especially here in the New Jersey, New York area, which I'm sure you've been feeling as well.
Yes, absolutely. It's a great topic. And before we get started, some background information. Between 2006 and 2010, there have been 3,300 deaths attributable to heat-related illness. And the most vulnerable populations are the very young and the very old, as well as adults with chronic medical conditions and athletes who are participating in summer sports outside.
Got it. Can you give us a breakdown between heat exhaustion and heat stroke? Are there noticeable differences?
Sure. So with heat exhaustion, your core temperature remains under 104 degrees Fahrenheit in the setting of an environmental heat exposure, and you still maintain your mental status, but you may feel dizzy, lightheaded, and you may even faint, but you tend to recover within 30 minutes and feel okay. Versus heat stroke is when your core temperature goes above 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and you do have some changes in mental status accompanied with increased heart rate, difficulty breathing, low blood pressure, all signs pointing that you need immediate medical attention.
Okay. Are there ways that heat-related illnesses can be prevented?
Absolutely. So the first part is staying cool. So whenever possible, avoid being outside between the hours of 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. when the sun tends to be the strongest. If you are going to be outside, look for areas of shade. But if you can avoid being outside, be in places with air conditioning. Avoid activities on pavement tops or asphalt, as they tend to be super hot. You want to also remain cool by, you could putting ice packs on your neck or cool compresses under your arms if you start to feel overheated. Other things is staying well hydrated. For adults, the recommendation is to drink half of your body weight in ounces of water per day. So let's say for a 140-pound person, you'd want to drink 70 ounces of water a day. And on days that are extra hot or you're outside exercising and doing any kind of physical activity, you want to increase that hydration. And then you want to choose foods that are high in water content, such as watermelon, cantaloupe, cucumbers, celery. So all the wonderful foods and fruits that are in season now. You also want to avoid things like caffeine and alcohol, as they can dehydrate you. And finally, you want to stay informed and pay attention to any heat advisories in your area.
Absolutely. Also, during this time with social distancing and everything, I feel like more people are trying to do outdoor activities by themselves. For example, I've been trying to take up hiking a bit more just because it's a more isolated activity, but the danger there is if something goes wrong, and let's just say, you start showing signs of heat exhaustion, you might be far away from anyone that can really help you. So I feel like it's even more crucial now to be aware of those warning signs and prevention methods, and to be mindful of what our own bodies are saying.
Yes, being outside during this time is wonderful, but again, You have to pay attention to your body. So when you're out hiking and you notice that you're starting to feel a little faint or dizzy, maybe your heart rate is higher than it normally is when exercising, you just want to pause, take a seat, find some shade, cool down, regroup, or even if you have to turn around and go back to your car or home. Right,
absolutely. And it's especially important to be mindful of those signs in children. Why are children more at risk for heat exhaustion and heat stroke?
Sure. So children have a higher metabolic rate, so they produce more heat in general. They also have a higher surface area to body mass ratio, so they absorb more heat. Children have less circulating blood volume, so they can't dissipate heat through their skin as well as adults. Children have a lower sweat ratio than adults, and children also tend to stay less hydrated, especially when participating in physical activity than adults. So again, all those things contribute to them just being more at risk.
Got it. For those who aren't familiar, what is basal metabolic rate?
Sure, that's just a fancy word for the body's metabolism. It's the number of calories required to keep the body functioning at rest.
Okay, got it. What are some ways to rehydrate a child who might be showing signs of overheating?
So infants who are formula or breastfed, should be the main source of rehydration is formula and breast milk. You could also use equal parts of apple juice and water. And then there's commercial drinks like Pedialyte, and there's also coconut water as options.
Okay. How will you know if your child has been adequately hydrated?
So with infants or children who are still in diapers, you'll see an increased amount of wet diapers. And for kids who are out of diapers, you'll notice that their urine is a pale yellow.
Got it, okay. And during this heat, it's also smart to be protecting your skin by using sunscreen. And as a big skincare enthusiast, I've always had a lot of questions on sunscreen. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the available sunscreens on the market currently?
Sure. So there's two main categories of sunscreens. There's the organic or chemical sunscreens, and you'll recognize them with active ingredients of oxybenzone and avobenzone. And they work by being absorbed through the skin, and they absorb the sun's rays to prevent the rays from burning the skin. As opposed to physical sunscreens or inorganic sunscreens, such as zinc oxide and titanium dioxide, they work like a shield by deflecting the sun's rays and preventing the burn. And the physical sunscreens tend to be more of the broad spectrum sunscreens, protecting against UVA and UVB rays. Just as a sidebar, the FDA currently is investigating the safety and efficacy of some of the chemical sunscreen ingredients on the market. Right now, those ingredients don't have the classification of GRAS, which stands for generally regarded as safe and effective, like the physical sunscreens do. That's because it's still unclear as to how much is being absorbed into the bloodstream and what effects those chemical sunscreens have on our bodies.
Oh, wow, okay. And going back to when you mentioned UVA and UVB sunlight, what would you say are the differences between those two types?
Sure. So UVB, think of B for burn. So those are the rays that will cause the sunburn. And then both UVA and UVB contribute to skin aging, photoaging, as well as increase the risk of skin cancer. UVB light contributes to 5% of the radiation that hits the Earth's surface versus UVA 25%. And just another interesting fact, the car windows will protect or block UVB light, but do not block UVA light.
Got it, okay.
Yeah.
Do you recommend using one over the other between physical and chemical sunscreens, especially for children?
So for children, definitely you want to use the physical sunscreens as they tend to be less irritating and sensitizing as the chemical ones. And they aren't, the only downside is they don't easily absorb, so they kind of leave that white film, and they're kind of annoying to get off. And then for adults, it's basically their comfort level. If they like the physical sunscreens, prefer something less of being absorbed into the body versus they want the convenience and the ease of application of the chemical sunscreen.
Okay. How much sunscreen should be applied, and when would you say it should be applied?
Okay, so you want to follow the teaspoon rule. So you want to do 1 teaspoon visually measured for your face, neck areas. Then you want to do a teaspoon each for your arms. So 1 teaspoon for one arm, 1 teaspoon for the other arm, a teaspoon for the front of your body, a teaspoon for the back of your body, and then 2 teaspoons each per leg.
Okay.
And you want to apply it 15 to 30 minutes prior to going out in the sun. And you want to wait 10 to 20 minutes before putting your clothes back on. So obviously this isn't in an ideal setting. It's more important to have the sunscreen on than not if you don't have the proper time intervals. But you still want to reapply sunscreen at least every 2 hours or more often, depending how much you're sweating and how much you're in the water.
Okay. That is really good to know. I've always thought water resistant meant waterproof. And there are so many different types of consistencies on sunscreens out there as well, such as lotions, sprays, even powders. What consistency would you recommend, especially if you have long exposure to sunlight or exposure to water?
Okay. So interestingly enough, FDA does not allow sunscreen manufacturers to write waterproof on their products because there's not a single sunscreen that's water or sweat proof. Instead, you'll notice things like water resistant and then a time next to the SPF. So for example, a sunscreen with SPF 40 may have 80 minutes next to it. That tells you that you can have that sunscreen on while in the water for 80 minutes and know that you're still getting the SPF 40 protection within those 80 minutes. Longer than 80 minutes, the efficacy of the sunscreen decreases and you need to reapply. And the same holds true if you are sweating for 80 minutes, you want to reapply after 80 minutes to ensure that the sunscreen is protecting you adequately.
Gotcha.
And then you also mentioned about the types of sunscreens. I know that sprays are very, very popular because they're easy to apply, but they do come with their own challenges. For example, they're easily inhaled and you want to avoid using the spray on your face because obviously you have your nose there, you're going to inhale the spray even if you try not to breathe. And if you are still wanting to use the spray, don't spray it on your face, spray it on the rest of your body. And then you're still going to need to use your hands to rub it in and make sure it's covering, all the surface areas.
I see. I've always been a fan of the lotions instead of the sprays for that exact reason, because I felt like whenever I would spray it on my body or face, like it would just go straight into my nose. Yeah. So additionally, there are so many SPF values out there. What SPF values do you recommend?
So for infants up to 6 months of age, the American Academy of Pediatrics actually does not recommend sunscreen if at all possible. So using physical barriers such as shade and clothing. But if you are gonna be outside with a young infant and it's unavoidable, then using SPF 15 or greater, remember using the sunscreens with zinc oxide or titanium dioxide for the young infants, and applying a very minimal amount just to the areas that the sun will be hitting them. And then for children and adults, the American Academy of Dermatology recommends SPF 30 or more. They do not recommend SPFs greater than 50 because it's kind of a waste of money at that point. They say that SPF 30 protects against 97% of UVB rays, 50, 98%, and then when you get to 100, it's 99%. So not much value there. And people tend to have a false sense of security if they are using the higher SPF sunscreens because they think they're more protected, and they tend to not reapply as often as they should.
Gotcha.
Oh yeah, and then don't forget your lips too. So
Okay.
lips protection, and think about
Right.
SPF 15 or more for your lips.
Right. So I do always forget about that. So
Yeah.
And if people, let's say, have not adequately protected themselves with sunscreen and have encouraged a bad sunburn, which I've done way too many times in my life, what's the best way to handle that?
Sure. So we can do our best, and we still are oftentimes come home with a sunburn or some skin irritation from the sun. And ways to mitigate that would be using cool compresses, increasing your hydration, so drinking more water, using calamine lotion. You can also do aloe vera gel products. Topical steroids are a bit controversial. There are some medical societies that advise avoiding them, but then there's others like the American Academy of Dermatology who says that over-the-counter steroid creams are okay to use. And then if you're in pain because of a sunburn, you can also try over-the-counter ibuprofen. If you have blistering, I highly recommend you seek medical attention, see your doctor, as there are prescription creams that will help heal the blistering. And you want to make sure that that skin does not get infected. And then there's other things like essential oils that are great options. For example, lavender helps decrease the redness from a sunburn and takes away the sting that's part of the burn. And then there's peppermint, which is a natural analgesic. So you can take a few drops of essential oil and put it in aloe vera gel or in coconut oil and apply it directly to your skin and reapply as often as needed.
Okay, that's interesting because I love essential oils, so I have a bunch here. So that's great to know that there's another use for them and they can help in this area as well. And so during this very unique time, as we're living through an interesting pandemic, face masks have become part of our everyday lives. Do masks help at all to protect the skin or to protect the lower face from the sun, or do you recommend still applying sunscreen under your mask?
Sure. A question I thought I would never get asked living in these times.
I know.
Definitely still apply sunscreen to your face because even if you wear a mask all day, the mask tends to move and doesn't stay in one place. And you would want to avoid exposing a potential area that's not protected from the sun or from sunscreen. And you also would want to avoid any weird tan lines from a mask. Let's say if you're just applying it to your forehead or the part of your nose.
Right. I know. I always wondered if I would end up getting a tan line right in the middle of my face. That'd be super fun. All right, so it looks like we still have some time left. So let me see if there are any questions for you here. Not sure if there are. Let's see. Okay, looks like there aren't any questions yet.
Okay.
We will wait like 30 seconds. Let's see. But thank you so much. This has been really informative.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it was fun doing a little bit of extra research on these topics and learning myself.
Definitely. All right. Ooh, looks like there's one question here. So one viewer asks, my daily moisturizer has SPF in it. Is that enough to go out in the sun? Or he added, or should I apply sunscreen on top of that?
Okay, so usually the moisturizer, the the sunscreen and moisturizers is adequate if you're just going out and about and have some what we call incidental light exposure, let's say from your car to the grocery store, or just in the morning, you know, going back and forth from work. And most moisturizers have SPF 15 or more in the moisturizer now. So it should be fine. But if you're going to be out for more prolonged periods, like walking around the city or going to the park or an outside barbecue, then yes, you'd probably want something with a higher SPF.
Gotcha. Someone else asks, I have very fair skin. How often should I get my skin checked for skin cancer?
That's a very good question. Definitely yearly, and then based on what the dermatologist may find, they'll map out your moles and whatever skin abnormalities, and they will tell you, oh, you know, everything's fine, come back in a year, or let's keep an eye on this one, come back in 3 to 6 months. So it's very good to get an annual skin check, especially people with fair skin or people who tend to be sun worshipers.
Gotcha. And then I actually have a question. So going back to SPF that's in other products, for like makeup, for example, and like if it's in your foundation, is that enough, do you think? Or should SPF be put like under makeup?
No, I think that would be enough. It goes back to probably has SPF 15 in it.
Okay, yeah, it's usually like 15 or.
Yeah, and I like the powder ones, the loose powders, because they're lighter, especially in the summertime, and they tend to be mineral based. So it goes back to the physical sunscreen, the ones with zinc, the actually titanium dioxide is in the powders. So that should definitely be enough for, again, incidental sun exposure or sun exposure here and there, but not for like beach going or hiking or anything where you have prolonged sun exposure.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. All right, well, let's see. Oh, there's one more question. So someone asks, does your skin become more vulnerable with age?
That's a very good question. Let me think about that one. I'm not sure if it becomes more vulnerable, but you'll have more signs of photo aging, and you'll have more moles and things that will pop up, what we call old age spots. So in a sense, it does, because with the cumulative years of sun exposure, it tends to lose its elasticity and its smoothness. And that's, you know, over 50 is when people start to noticing, oh, you know, I'm getting these weird things on my skin, or I have this red patch that won't go away. Those are the things that, again, you want to get checked out yearly, because some of them are normal sunspots, sun aging, and others could be precancerous.
Got it. Okay.
So come to your EHE exam if you're an EHE, if you have this benefit.
Right. Yes, definitely. Definitely come in. And you said you're at the Morristown EHE clinic.
Yeah,
okay.
Morristown.
Make sure. If you ever want to find Dr. Weil, she'll be at the Morristown clinic. All right. Well, I think those are all the questions that we have. Awesome. All right. So we'll wrap it up here. Thank you again, Dr. Weil.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And make sure to follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram for any additional content. And tune in next week for another special episode. All right. Thanks again. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.